Is it on? Okay. Good evening, Madam Chairman and members of the Senate Committee. My name is Attorney Maria Piro Fusaro, and I am an attorney in private practice for the last 11 years here in the state of Rhode Island. And I'm here tonight to give a legal analysis in opposition of the bill that is before you today. You may have been provided with a memo that is from Attorney Paul Linton, which is basically is an excellent memo which outlines the reason that we are in opposition, and this is something that all three of us agree with this legal analysis. And in my testimony, I'm going to be pointing out and summarizing certain points and hopefully further explaining what he's saying in that memo. So the opposing side will have you believe that this bill is somehow more restrictive than the original H5125 bill that was introduced. However, and that they're also saying that it simply codifies Roe versus Wade and codifies current Rhode Island law. I'm here, again, with my brother and sister attorney to show you that, legally speaking, there is nothing further from the truth. This bill would allow abortions in the third trimester through their moment of birth. The bill writers attempted to add language that appears to restrict the late-term abortions. So specifically in Section D, where it says, I won't read the whole thing, but it says towards the end, when necessary in the, quote, medical judgment of a physician to preserve the life or health of that individual. So it appears, right, there's an exception there, or prohibition. However, the problem is there's no definition for the word health. And this has actually been done in other states. So, and you can see where the issue lies. Without parameters, a definition, set of rules as to what health means, basically you are deferring to the discretion of it's non-restricted and subjective judgment of the medical health provider, the abortionist, the one who's getting paid, right, to do this is going to be the one who's going to decide.
Maria, is
Yes.
that defined in Doe versus Bolton? Health? One of the progeny of Roe? That health, is that defined in subsequent, my understanding is that that's defined in subsequent case law.
There is language, I believe, in Doe versus Bolton, but in this specific bill, it doesn't specify if this is what we, it doesn't actually tell us. It actually does leave it to the medical provider. Anything further? No, okay.
So I apologize for
No, that's okay.
messing up your train of
that's
thought.
okay.
I would have forgotten, frankly, if I didn't.
Okay. So basically, what this leads to is that without having parameters or explaining, it also includes mental health. So what we have seen is that when mental health is included, or not excluded, I should say, then it's really leaves it wide open without necessarily a prohibition. So this is what I was leading to, even though it might appear to be one. So basically, to give you a couple examples, pre-Roe versus Wade, in the state of California, there was a standard that if a woman, for mental health reasons, could have an abortion if she basically met the level of a civil commitment. So this is basically someone that they could show that she would pose a danger to herself or to others, which is a very high standard. But yet that year, 60,000 abortions were performed due to this alleged mental health standard, even though it was so high. So we're sitting here wondering, do we really believe that 60,000 women met this high commitment standard at that time? To just show us how this leaves it open, especially open to be abused by the doctors, to basically say, well, this is just a mental health condition, and let it go, even though that was such a high standard. Here in Rhode Island, according to this bill, if this passed, there is no standard listed in there, or any rule, any definition for that matter. In a recent example, in the state of Kansas, they had passed a law, and there was actually a standard again. They actually attempted to define it, saying that a substantial and irreversible impairment of a major physical and mental function. So that sounds like they gave parameters to the doctor there, some kind of definition. But there was reportedly a case in 2012 where the late-term abortionist Tiller was found to have provided late-term abortions to teens. And the reason cited was for, quote, being anxious over missing basketball practice or rodeo competition, or because they wanted to go to the prom. So this is extremely concerning because this shows a glimpse of what could easily be lying ahead here in Rhode Island. Again, they actually had a definition listed there But yet it was still gone beyond that and abused and by the doctors in that situation. And these type of things were occurring and are occurring at this time, really, frankly. But and interestingly, those girls were not referred to a psychiatrist, or again, reportedly, to a psychiatrist or psychologist despite having supposed mental health issue. So that just goes to show, they're really concerned with the mental health of these women or just to have the abortion performed. And I just want to stop here to note, because I think it's interesting that this purports to help women and protect them, from if they're having a mental health issue during this time to allow late-term abortion. But does the doctor consider in that situation, or this law for that matter, or public policy, consider the woman's mental health after she has this abortion? Do they consider what it could do to her? Has anyone really looked into? I think it's really just ignored by the opposition. But as far as really in general, we don't hear a lot about PSTD, what happens, especially late-term abortion. What kind of effect could this have on these women? Has anyone thought of that? This is real and it exists. And there's places like Rachel's Vineyard. There is the Silent No More campaign where thousands and thousands of women have poured out with their testimony and what this has done to them. So why are we invoking a public policy which leads women to despair? Why are we not invoking public policy which will inspire hope? Why are we not, funding or promoting or celebrating centers like the Little Flower Home, which houses women when they have nowhere to go but they're pregnant, or like Mother of Life Center in Providence, right here, or in my hometown we have the Deborah Felicaro Pregnancy Center of Westerly. Why are we not funding these? Why are we not helping these women? Why aren't we truly loving, supporting, and truly being there for women? Because that is what the definition of love is to really help them during this time, not to promote killing their own child. And another point about this prohibition is that there is no criminal penalties listed for the doctor, which is troubling. If he does not, if he violates this alleged prohibition, for post-viability, there's no criminal penalty, and there's only professional discipline, but yet this is not even required, it's just permitted. So if a doctor violates this, there's a chance he could get a license for revoked. So what kind of deference effect does this have on the doctor or the abortionist to even follow this ban? I believe none, really. So in sum, as I've just shown, the added language is essentially meaningless and unenforceable. It does not, in fact, regulate abortion any more than the original version of the bill that we had looked at. We believe that this language is just added in an attempt to appease a massive outcry in our state against late-term abortion. And without definitive parameters defining what health means, it's just leaving the door wide open to basically having an abortion for any reason up until the moment of birth, which could also result in infanticide. This is therefore absolutely no way simply codifying Roe versus Wade, but it overreaches and goes well beyond Roe versus Wade. Just a few other points that I will touch on is the impact of, I know this was actually already discussed, of the methods of abortion, which is the partial birth abortion ban, law would be repealed. And the current law in Rhode Island states that partial birth abortions prohibit except to save the life of the mother. So by repealing this does not codify the Rhode Island laws. And what this would effectively do is allow basically any method at any time of an abortion. So if, let's say, there's two equally safe procedures for a mother who's having an abortion, basically, or if they're having an issue, and the doctor either could choose between inducing labor or dismemberment, the doctor could, just for no reason at all, choose the latter, dismemberment, just because he feels like it. So there's no parameters, restrictions saying, we should choose the one that's safer, healthier, that could possibly save this child in the end. And I just wanted to point out here as well that in Gonzalez versus Carhart, this was a federal case and actually indicates that a law that we currently have in our books, that partial birth abortion be prohibited except to save the life of the mother, a law like that was, a federal law was upheld and passed constitutional muster. So that shows us that in Rhode Island, if we wanted to keep this law, we likely could, and we could also, it shows that, see how that's a very specific, it says prohibited except to save life, very specific definition. That means that, you know, if time was taken, you know, and there could be a well thought out law with definitions, clear prohibitions, thoroughly researched, thoughtfully addressed, and without any ambiguity, without leaving us with doubt. And this type of law would likely survive, according to, again, the Gonzalez case, and would pass constitutional muster here in Rhode Island, and also would stay in line with our current law. But rather, it appears that there's rush basically to seize the moment of what this false idea that if this law doesn't pass right away, right now, they know there's going to be something, basically that the Roe versus Wade will be overturned or something major is going to happen that we have really no indication of at this time. So basically, it appears that they just added on this additional Section D just to try to appease and appear that they covered late term abortion in the third trimester, but in fact, it really does not. And finally, there's the impact on parental consent, which again, that was also discussed, and that does go beyond constitutional Roe versus Wade or any type of constitutional law, which we just believe is absolutely outrageous that aside from a parent, a sibling, an older sibling or a grandparent could make a decision. And this is someone who basically has no say over this child. This child was cared for and had custody from a parent their entire life. And then they can basically just bypass them and go to an older sibling. So just imagine for those who have children what this means. And the last thing is the quick child statute being repealed. This was actually added to this bill, we noticed. In the last bill of 5125, this was not included. What this does, it actually would take away the only law that we have in Rhode Island that would protect if a woman was pregnant and she was killed or she was assaulted and the baby dies, this law would protect or give some type of consequence to the person who kills the child in the womb. And just to give an example of where this could lead us, recently in New York, reportedly, a pregnant woman was stabbed to death. She was stabbed in the stomach many times. And thanks to the new recently passed New York so-called Reproductive Health Care Act, there will be no consequence to the murderer of that child. So that's just a preview of what could be lying ahead for us. So I just want to end with saying, sorry, I know I probably went past my time, but okay.
Long, and I'm doing my best to be as
I'm gonna end here.
accommodating as possible, but it's early.
Okay. So I just want to say, I believe this is the biggest human rights issue of our time. And I know it's interesting because I heard the flip side said here from the opposing side, but actually we believe this is the biggest human rights issue of our time. And looking back from years from now, we're just going to say, what in the world were we thinking? You know, it's just, we believe it's just pure insanity. And just ask you, what side of history do you want to be on? Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for this witness? Thank you.